Ralph Dale Earnhardt, Daytona International Speedway 2001. On February 18, 2001, 49-year-old Ralph Dale Earnhardt was competing in the 2001 Daytona 500 at Daytona International Speedway in Florida. A seven-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and one of the most recognizable figures in motorsports, Earnhardt was driving his black number 3 Goodwrench Chevrolet in what marked his 25th season at the highest level of stock car racing. That afternoon, the weather was perfect: blue skies, warm temperatures, and a light breeze. The race had gone smoothly, typical of Daytona's restrictor plate style, where cars run inches apart at speeds exceeding 190 miles per hour. After leading 17 laps earlier, Earnhardt spent the final portion of the race guarding his two cars up front, teammate Michael Waltrip in first place, and his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. close behind in second. Positioned in third, Earnhardt played the role of protector, keeping the aggressive pack behind him at bay. As the white flag waved for the final lap, the intensity reached its peak. Sterling Marlin, running just behind, made a move to the inside, looking for a way around. Earnhardt instinctively shifted slightly down the track to block the pass. The two cars made the slightest contact, Marlin's front bumper brushing Earnhardt's left rear, sending the black number 3 Chevrolet into a brief slide toward the apron, the flat area separating the track from the infield. Fans in the stands watched closely, confident that the seasoned driver would save it as he had done many times before. But in correcting the slide, Earnhardt's car suddenly snapped upward across the track and into the path of Ken Schrader's Pontiac. Schrader's right front clipped Earnhardt's passenger side, forcing the number 3 car into the outside wall at roughly 160 miles per hour. The car struck hard, then slid down the banking into the infield. Track crews rushed to the scene within seconds. Schrader climbed from his car, peered into Earnhardt's window, and immediately waved for help. At 5:16 p.m. EST, doctors at Halifax Medical Center pronounced Dale Earnhardt dead from a basilar skull fracture. His passing stunned the sports world and prompted NASCAR to revolutionize safety, mandating head and neck restraints, installing shock-absorbing barriers, and redesigning cars to better protect drivers. Dale Earnhardt's final race changed the sport forever. Adam Petty, New Hampshire Motor Speedway, 2000. On May 12, 2000, 19-year-old Adam Petty was practicing at the New Hampshire International Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. He was part of the famous Petty racing family and had just started building his own NASCAR career. That day, he was practicing for the Busch 200 race, running laps and getting used to the track. Everything seemed normal at first, just another day at the racetrack. As practice progressed, Adam ran more timed laps and appeared confident behind the wheel. Then, during one of his runs shortly after 12 p.m. in the second practice session for qualifying, something went horribly wrong. Coming down the backstretch toward turn 3, his throttle jammed wide open, meaning the car kept accelerating even as he tried to slow down. He braked and shifted down, but nothing worked. He couldn't slow the car, and there was nowhere to go. The critical moment came in an instant. His car shot straight into the outside wall at turn 3 at full speed, hitting almost head-on. The impact was massive, causing a fatal head and neck injury. Track safety crews arrived within seconds and began working to remove him from the wrecked car. They reportedly cut through the roof, working furiously for 20 minutes before freeing Adam and rushing him to the hospital. He was taken to Concord Hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. The loss of Adam Petty shook NASCAR to its core. He was so young, incredibly talented, and carried one of the sport's most legendary names. His tragic death forced NASCAR to take a serious look at its safety standards. The organization soon introduced a kill switch on steering wheels, so drivers could shut off their engines if a throttle ever got stuck again. Over time, more safety improvements were added, including better head and neck restraints and stronger barriers around the tracks. Kenny Irwin Jr., New Hampshire Motor Speedway, 2000. On July 7, 2000, 30-year-old Kenny Irwin Jr. arrived at New Hampshire International Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire, the same track where Adam Petty had died just 2 months prior. He was there to practice for the Winston Cup race scheduled for that weekend. Kenny had made a name for himself as one of NASCAR's bright young talents, having won Rookie of the Year in 1998 and was known for his smooth driving and competitive spirit. During that Friday practice session, Kenny took his car out for several laps, working on speed and handling. Everything looked normal as he built up momentum on the track. Then, during one of his runs down the backstretch heading into turn 3, something suddenly went wrong. The car didn't respond as it should have. Reports later suggested that the throttle might have stuck open, which meant the car kept accelerating even as he tried to slow down. Kenny tried to regain control, but at that speed, there was little he could do. In the critical moment, the car went straight toward the outside wall between turns 3 and 4 and hit it nearly head-on. The impact was violent, sending the car spinning and flipping onto its roof. The force of the crash caused a basilar skull fracture, the same kind of injury that had killed Adam Petty at the very same track just 2 months earlier. Track safety crews rushed to the scene right away. They reached the car within seconds and began working to free Kenny from the wreckage. He was taken to Concord Hospital as fast as possible, but the crash had been too severe, and he was pronounced dead not long after. The loss of Kenny Irwin Jr. shook the NASCAR community deeply. He was talented, respected, and still had so much ahead of him, but the aftermath came with much better safety standards that improved the process throughout the coming years. Tony Roper, Texas Motor Speedway, 2000. On October 14, 2000, 35-year-old Tony Roper was racing at Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, Texas. He was competing in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, driving his number 26 Ford in the O'Reilly 400. Tony came from a racing family and had worked his way up through smaller series to reach NASCAR's national level. For him, this was another chance to prove himself against some of the best in the sport. The race had started normally the night before, on October 13th. Tony had qualified 15th and was holding his own in the early laps. As the race went on, he ran close to the middle of the pack, moving alongside other drivers to gain position. Then, just past lap 30, everything changed. While racing down the front stretch, Tony tried to make a move between trucks driven by Steve Grissom and Rick Ware. The right front of Grissom's truck made slight contact with Tony's left rear, which instantly sent Tony's truck veering hard to the right. In that split second, the truck went straight into the concrete wall at full speed. The impact was nearly head-on, and the force of the crash was tremendous. The truck burst into flames and came to rest near the wall. The violent impact caused a severe neck injury that immediately left Tony unresponsive inside the truck. Safety crews reached the scene within moments. They quickly cut the roof off the damaged vehicle and worked to pull Tony out. He was rushed first to the Infield Care Center and then airlifted to Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas. Doctors found that the impact had caused a neck injury that cut off blood flow to his brain, leaving him in a coma. Despite all efforts to save him, Tony Roper passed away the next morning at 10:55 a.m. Tony became the first driver ever to die during competition at Texas Motor Speedway, and the third NASCAR driver lost in 2000, following Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin Jr. earlier that year. Fireball Roberts, Charlotte Motor Speedway, 1964. It was May 24, 1964, and Glenn Fireball Roberts was at Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina. He was one of NASCAR's biggest stars at the time, famous for his speed, confidence, and the fiery style that earned him his nickname. Fireball was already a winner of major races like the 1962 Daytona 500, and that day, he was hoping to add another big victory to his career at the World 600. The race had barely begun when trouble struck. Fireball had qualified in 11th place, which put him right in the thick of the action as the field bunched together in the early laps. On lap 7, 2 cars ahead of him, driven by Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson, tangled and crashed. Fireball tried to swerve and avoid them, but there wasn't enough room. His car hit the inside retaining wall hard, and in that instant everything went wrong. The impact ruptured his fuel tank, and the car burst into flames. Within seconds, his vehicle was engulfed, turning into an inferno as it slid down the track. Fireball was trapped inside, pinned under the dashboard, and other drivers could hear him shouting for help. Jarrett stopped his own car and ran toward the wreckage, trying desperately to pull him out, but the flames were too intense. Track safety crews reached the burning car quickly and managed to pull Fireball out, but he had already suffered severe burns. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, with second and third-degree burns covering most of his body. Doctors did everything they could, and for a time, it seemed like he might survive. But after several weeks of fighting, complications set in, and on July 2, 1964, Fireball Roberts passed away. His death hit the racing world hard. Fireball wasn't just a talented driver. He was a fan favorite and one of the sport's most recognizable names. In the months that followed, NASCAR made big safety changes. They introduced fire-retardant driver suits, redesigned fuel cells to prevent ruptures, and pushed for better emergency response equipment. J.D. McDuffie, Watkins Glen International, 1991. On August 11, 1991, J.D. McDuffie was racing at Watkins Glen International in Watkins Glen, New York. He was a veteran of the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, known for his determination and love for the sport. J.D. had been racing for almost 30 years, often fielding his own car on a small budget. Around lap 5, J.D. was running mid-pack when something went terribly wrong. His car suffered a mechanical failure. The left front wheel spindle broke off, which meant he instantly lost steering and control. The car veered to the right and clipped another driver, Jimmy Means, before shooting off the track toward the barrier. McDuffie's car slammed into the tire wall and guardrail at nearly 170 miles per hour. The impact was so violent that the car lifted off the ground, flipped, and came to rest upside down. The crash caused fatal head and neck injuries, leaving him unresponsive inside the wreckage. Track safety crews reached the scene within moments. The race was immediately stopped, and red flags waved across the track. Medical personnel worked quickly, but it was too late. J.D. McDuffie was pronounced dead at the scene. The loss of J.D. McDuffie marked the end of an era. He was one of NASCAR's toughest and most respected independent drivers, someone who raced purely for the love of it. His death exposed safety issues at Watkins Glen. The section where he crashed was too fast and didn't have enough protective barriers. Because of this, track officials made immediate changes. For the 1992 season, they added a new bus stop chicane, a sequence of two mirror-image corners designed to slow down traffic by forcing a sharp S-shaped path called the inner loop to slow cars before that dangerous section. Joe Weatherly, Riverside International Raceway, 1964. On January 19, 1964, Joe Weatherly was racing at Riverside International Raceway in Riverside, California. He was a two-time Grand National champion and known for his fun-loving personality that earned him the nickname the Clown Prince of Racing. The race that day was the fifth event of the 1964 season, and Joe was running strong in his number 8 Mercury. The track at Riverside was a challenging road course, filled with tight corners and long straightaways. During the race, Joe's car reportedly had some mechanical issues, possibly related to the brakes or oil system, but he pushed through them and kept racing as hard as ever. As Joe entered Turn 6, one of the track's tricky sections, his car drifted wide toward the outside wall. The left side of the car slammed into the steel barrier. At the time, cars didn't have window nets or many of the safety features that exist today, and Joe wasn't wearing a shoulder harness because many drivers feared getting trapped in case of a fire. The force of the crash threw his head outside the window, and it struck the wall on impact. Safety crews rushed to the scene within seconds, but the crash was devastating. When they reached his car, there was nothing they could do. Joe Weatherly was pronounced dead at the track. The loss of Joe Weatherly hit NASCAR hard. He was 41 years old, still at the peak of his career, and one of the sport's most respected and entertaining figures. In the months that followed, NASCAR officials began rethinking driver safety. They soon made shoulder harnesses mandatory and introduced window nets to keep drivers' arms and heads inside the car during crashes. They also improved the padding and structure of car doors to better protect drivers from side impacts. Clifford Allison, Michigan International Speedway, 1992. On August 13, 1992, 27-year-old Clifford Allison took part in a practice session for the Detroit Gasket 200 at Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan. He was the son of NASCAR legend Bobby Allison and a proud member of the famous Alabama Gang. Clifford had big dreams of following in his father's footsteps and was competing in the NASCAR Busch Series, hoping to build a name of his own in racing. Everything seemed routine at first as he ran several laps, getting his car dialed in and finding his rhythm on the fast 2-mile track. Michigan was a high-speed oval, and every turn demanded precision and control. Coming through Turn 4, Clifford's car suddenly lost control. It began to spin and then slammed hard into the concrete outside wall on the driver's side. The hit was severe, nearly a straight-on impact, and the force tore the seat loose from its mounts. When that happened, his safety harness could no longer hold him in place, leaving him exposed to the full force of the crash. Track safety crews reached the wreck almost immediately. They pulled Clifford from the car and began emergency treatment right there on the infield. An ambulance rushed him toward the nearest hospital, but his injuries were too severe. Clifford Allison passed away while being transported, just a few minutes after the crash. Clifford's death hit especially hard because of who he was, not just a promising young driver, but the son of one of NASCAR's most beloved champions. In the aftermath, Clifford's death raised serious concerns about safety equipment inside race cars. NASCAR began looking closely at seat mounts, harness designs, and the way driver protection systems were installed. If you'd like to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.